Pop quiz time. Adolf Hitler, Saddam Hussein, Joseph Stalin. All three of these men shared something in common. Can you guess what it is? Well, if you guessed that they were all three brutal, bloodthirsty, genocidal, megalomaniacal dictators, you'd be right, but only incidentally in this case, because they were also all three victims of child abuse. And the prevention of abuse-derived dysfunctions through the regulation of parenting is something that I'd like to propose and discuss. Because if there's a public concern that's more pressing, more perennial than even preventing arbitrary and reckless voting, then I think it has to be preventing arbitrary and reckless parenting, the latter being all the more damaging and long-lasting. If the right to vote is what shapes our future political leaders, then it stands to reason that the right to parenting is ultimately what shapes our future citizens. Yet this entire topic of discussion so often seems to be beyond discussion. It's a sacred cow, an off-limits, out-of-bounds thing to question another parent's sovereignty over their own child, which in itself begs the question, what of a child's own sovereignty, and what of a child's right to grow up unabused and with an unpoisoned mind and body? If we want to prevent rampant psychosocial dysfunctions from being passed on to generation to generation ad infinitum and stem their long-term effects, then I think at some point we're going to have to determine that parenting is a responsibility and it carries far too great a risk to be open to all without qualification. That's just madness. The welfare of children, of all children, ultimately affect the welfare of the state and its evolving national consciousness as these children themselves grow up and perpetuate this pattern of abuse. And I think this necessitates recognizing that the right of parenting itself is not an inalienable right. Another not-so-fun fact, 30 to 60% of pedophiles were themselves abused as children. This trend of perpetuating abuse, it holds true for so many of these psychological and sexual afflictions that it seems the only way to prevent them and their continued growth is to abort them in utero. That is, we need a proactive child services department, one that is invested with government power and resources to prevent abuse and all of its concomitant societal effects before they occur. Currently, we have what are known as child services, but these are not at any point preventative. They're reactionary only. Child services, generally speaking, can only intervene after so much damage has already been done, and only a tiny percentile of true abuse cases are ever even brought under scrutiny in the first place. And I don't know, it seems like allowing cancer to manifest its progress in the body before ever taking action. Proactive measures, it seems, are required to stem abuse from rearing its ugly head in adult life as it's perpetuated through the generations, and it makes for some very ugly societal conflicts. And I think the only way to achieve this is to prevent wholly unfit people from ever becoming parents. If we could guarantee that all parents were fit to be parents in the first place, there'd be no possibility of children developing psychopathic or wounded antisocial tendencies from their environment, or at least not from at least this would be greatly stemmed, I think. And many, I guess, would ask, what determines fit precisely? And to this, I would propose a thorough system wherein, if any couple wish to have a child, you simply submit themselves to the same sort of investigative rigor as would any potential parents who seek to adopt a child. Local branches of this national child services department would be the ones administering the application process for all potential couples across the country. Red flags are things like history of violence, substance abuse, unstable emotions, irresponsible actions without concern for others. These sort of things would temporarily disqualify all applicants who wanted to have a child. But I think this would necessarily be a temporary process, and not indefinite. Anyone denied would have the opportunity to reapply after so many months, assuming they self-rehabilitated. So if anyone was truly determined to have a child, this would cause them to make an improvement within themselves so that they could effectively realize this goal, and this would be of some utility to society. But until they could show a marked improvement in the management of their own lives, I feel, why should they be given free rein in dictating the life of another? So long as one can demonstrate competence and responsibility and at least a modicum of personal decency, I think they should be able to receive a license to have children, which is revocable, but so long as one is reasonably well adjusted, this probably wouldn't rear its ugly head. I suppose some people would say, is for matters of practicality, how exactly are you going to prevent people from having sex and having children? To this, I would say there would be no crime in procreation without a license itself, so long as the baby was given over to the local branch of the government and to the government-sponsored social services program, and given to a family which actually did desire and deserve it. Now, considering the amount of people, the sheer volume of people who actually have children, I can imagine that many would find this scenario highly impractical. But I think, assuming that stiff fines and even prison sentences were imposed for raising a child without a license and potentially damaging them with their proven incompetence, I think given these regulations in place, in addition to the rigorous application process, that fewer would actually seek to become parents or risk being unlicensed parents. And ultimately, this would leave us with only the most resolutely determined, loving, and capable parents who had proven themselves, by their determination in the application process. And I think this would eliminate psychosocial disorders beget by abuse time and time again, while simultaneously eliminating the overpopulation problem as a whole. And I think this would be a very effective solution to both of those. Now, this is a highly emotionally charged issue and likely a very controversial opinion, which, mind you, this is still a very broad sketch of an idea. But I think that abusive and undeserving parents who perpetuate psychological disorders and instill vicious values in their children is ultimately a social problem, and one that is at the heart of all criminality, all cruelty, and all disorder. And it's one that must be dealt with if it is to be overcome.